Good morning. In the second part of Buddhism, we will study about the Buddhist Sangha and the laity. The monastic order of monks and ultimately also of nuns was created within the Buddha's lifetime. Its establishment meant that followers of Buddha carved out a distinct identity for themselves within the larger community of renunciants. The Buddhist Sangha became a core institution and a major factor in the dissemination of Buddha's doctrines. The Vinayak Pit gives an account of the establishment of the Sangha and the rules that governed it. The Pravrajya ceremony marked a person's going forth from home into homelessness and his/her becoming a novice under a preceptor. The Upasampad was the ordination ceremony when the novice became a full-fledged member of the monastic community. Senior monks held authority within a monastic community. Members of the Sangha living in a locality were supposed to gather every fortnight on the new moon and full moon days to recite the Pratimukh rules and confess if they had broken any. According to tradition, the first lay followers of Buddha were two merchants. They were Tapas and Bhallik. Thereafter, the ranks of the laity expanded swiftly. The laity include male followers known as Upasak and the female followers known as Upasika. The social implications of the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha has often been projected as a social reformer, even as a revolutionary who stood against social discrimination and favored equality for all. A close reading of the Pali text reveals a different, more complex picture. The Buddha's doctrines were certainly more socially inclusive than the Brahminical tradition, but it did not aim at abolishing social differences. Buddhist texts reveal biases of their own, and these biases were reflected even in supposedly a social word of Sangha. The key point is that the Buddha saw all social relationships as fetters and a source of suffering. It was only by breaking away from these fetters that a person could attain liberation. The creation of the monastic order had the potential for creating great social upheaval by providing a haven for social dropouts. However, the Buddhist tradition reflects a desire to maintain the status quo and specifies a number of conditions for entry. For instance, soldiers could not join without the permission of the king. Slaves could not join until freed by their masters, and debtors could not join until they had paid off their debts. The Buddhist tradition considered Varna a man-made ordering, unlike the divine sanction conferred on it by the Brahminical tradition. Varna and Jati were supposed to be irrelevant for aspirants to the Sangha. A close look at its actual composition indicates a significant proportion of upper class members. A large section of monks were Brahmins or Kshatriyas or belonged to the families enjoying a high status. The Pali Canon reversed the Brahminical order of rank and places the Kshatriya higher than the Brahman. While the Buddha is frequently portrayed as rejecting the Brahminical claim to innate superiority, the term Brahmana is used in two senses in Buddhist text. On the one hand, it is used in conventional sense as a social category. On the other, it is also used as an ideal category to refer to a wise person who led an exemplary life. In places, the Buddha himself is addressed as Brahman. Birth and family were were important in worldly matters, but there is a parallel refrain that deeds were more important. In Samyutta Nikaya, when asked about his origins by the Brahman Saundrika, Buddha replies, "Do not ask of the origin, ask of the behavior. Just as fire can be born out of any wood, so can a saint be born in a kul of low status." Birth in a high or low family is often explained as the result of actions in previous lives, but the potential for achieving Nibbana is there in all. The Buddhist position on Varna and birth emerged clearly in many places, especially in the Ambhat Sutta in Digha Nikaya. The Kshatriya is considered superior to Brahman when it comes to worldly social status, but the one who has attained Nibbana is superior to all. The Buddha's thumb must have appealed to the laity because it offered a coherent code of conduct. The laity, especially those who gave lavish gifts, included Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Gahapatis, members of the so-called Uच्च kuls and Neech kuls. The Kshatriya patrons include powerful kings such as Bimbisar, Ajatashatru, and Prasenajit. Buddhist texts assign the Gahapati an especially high social standing. Gahapatis were also among the most important lay supporters of the Sangh. Their importance were acknowledged by the fact that some of them are described as being visited on their deathbed by the Buddha or by other prominent monks, an honor generally reserved for members of the Sangh. Buddhist and women. Two important features of early Buddhism were the assertion that the highest goal, Nibbana, was possible for women and the creation of a Bhikkhuni Sangh. On the other hand, Buddhist texts reflect stereotyped ideals of the submissive and obedient women whose life was supposed to revolve around her husband and sons. They also contain many negative images of women as temptresses and creatures of passion. Buddhist tradition suggests that Buddha was not initially keen to establish a Bhikkhuni Sangh but ultimately gave in to the persistent pressure of his disciple Anand and his aunt and foster mother Mahaprajapati Gautami. The Vinaya Pitaka described him as making the gloomy prediction that the doctrine would decline in 500 instead of 1000 years because women had been admitted into the Sangh. The Sangh was not open to pregnant women, mothers of unweaned children, rebellious women who associated with young men, and those who did not have their parents' or husbands' permission to join. The rules for nuns were basically the same as those for monks, but there were more rules. Buddhist texts contain several references to learned nuns. The Samyutta Nikaya refers to Sheikh Khema, whose discourse to King Prasanandi so impressed him that he stood up and bowed before her when she had finished. The Agutta Nikaya tells us that when the Buddha heard answers Dhamdina theory had given to questions posed by the laywomen Vishakha, he asked Vishakha, the nun Dhamnita is truly wise. She is very learned. If you had put these questions to me, I would have given you the same answer. A tradition's progressiveness has to be judged by the standards of its own time. By the standards of the 6th-5th century BCE, the Buddha opened up a significant space for the women's spiritual aspirations. Similarly, compared to texts of religious tradition, women are strikingly visible in Buddhist texts. In subsequent centuries, women, both bhikkhuni and upasika, were very visible as donors at Buddhist stupa monastery sites. Nevertheless, after its inception, the Bhikkhuni Sangha seemed to be a shadowy entity in the available resources. Thank you.